for the live.
Good afternoon. I'm Francis Rizama, the Yigo Mayor. It is now 5:05 p.m. Today is Thursday, June 26th. I call this YMPC public hearing to order. This hearing is being conducted at the Yigo Senior Citizen Center and is live streamed on the Yigo Mayor's Office YouTube channel. This public hearing is for application number H2025-19 Conditional Use Permit. The applicant is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, represented by GHD Inc. From GHD Inc., we have here Mr. Joseph Pangilinan, who will give his presentation on this project. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this public presentation, public hearing. Again, I just want to thank the Mayor and her staff for letting us use this facility and helping us through this process. So yes, this project is for a conditional use application. It's for a patron house facility, and it will be for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I would just like to go ahead and introduce our team that's here right now. So that all the members of the church representatives that are here as well as GHD. So what I'd like to do is introduce Tony Brown, and he's the temple facility manager, and with him is also Bobby O'Brien, who is a temple facility assistant. They're both from the church. Philip Norea is our project architect from GHD. He's a representative of the church as well, and I'm Joe Pangilinan. I'm the project manager for this project, and I'm a representative for the church. So this project actually is located on 711 South. It's just right down the street from this location, and actually from the main traffic right on Marine Corps Drive. If you go up about half a mile, it's just right there on the left side between Malala Drive and Marine Corps Drive. It is on a commercial zone property. And with that being said, because it's on a commercial zone property, we're required to actually get this process through the Land Use Commission. And so the reason for us doing this project is because the members of the church, there's quite a bit of them, and they're not, a lot of them come from out of Guam, or they're from around the region. And when they come here, they have no place to stay. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tony. Maybe he can say a little bit about that.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for all the work you've done on this project to get us ready to share. Just a little bit about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have 3 buildings here in Guam. Up here on the Yigo site, we've got a building in Vergara as well as down in Santa Rita. And so those congregations that meet at these buildings, they all benefit from this site that has the temple and the meeting house here in Yigo. And but the temple serves more than just the members of our church who come to Guam or who live in Guam. This temple is actually the only temple for our church that's in all of Micronesia. And so these individuals come from Yap and Palau and Pohnpei and Chuk, and sometimes even other places. And they come to worship in the temple. And right now, when they come, they end up staying in hotels down further from the temple. And we are now looking to add this patron housing facility so that they have a place on site where they can be close to the temple when they come to Guam. And so it'll be more convenient for them and their families as they come to be in the temple and have their temple experiences together. So.
Thanks, Tony. And so with that being said, what I'd like to do is, before I talk specifically about the patron housing project, is talk a little bit about, the whole project development for this site. So it gives everyone a better perspective of what this project is about and what we're trying to do. Because, the church has been, part of this community for over 50 years. And so that being said, over time, the old facility that was there, it's gone through its fair share of wear and tear, right? We've had numerous typhoons and so forth. But in addition to that, they also have, their needs have grown, their membership has grown. And so what the church decided to do was go ahead and tear down the old facility and develop the entire site for something that would meet the needs of the church. So what they did was, through a collaborative effort of the church, planners, consultants, and our design team, come up with a collaborative plan to develop this project in multiple phases. The first phase would be to develop a temple, which really is the catalyst for everything that's on the site. And that's more of their pristine functions and their special events. And then the next, if you go to the next slide here. So, yeah, sorry, I meant to point you back to the screen here, but, so the next phase of the project was to build a meeting house, which functions more as their social hall, their training area. It's fitted with classrooms. In addition to that, it's a place of worship. And so these two projects that you see up here, the temple and the meeting house, those facilities have been built. But what I would also like to say is that as we were planning this project, the church wanted to make sure that we were being good stewards to the community. And so they did a due diligence study before we even broke ground on the first project, which was a temple. And that due diligence basically was to identify anything that would adversely affect the community. And so what they did was they hired our firm to do a report on the project site and the impacts that it would have on the community. So what we considered was a few things. One was the environmental impact. The other was, were there any impacts to native species? Were there going to be any impacts to flooding? So we have to look at stormwater requirements as well. Were there going to be impacts to the traffic flow in and around the area, because that area right along Marine Corps Drive has a high volume of traffic, especially during the peak hours. You can anywhere from 10 to 20,000 cars flow through there. I think on average we said it was 17,000 cars a day that go through that location. So quite a bit of traffic in that area. And then the other thing was we had to look at infrastructure. What was the impact on the sewer? What was the impact on the water requirements, water source requirements, and the power? And so what we did was, before we did all that, we came out with a plan to address any of that, mitigate some of those areas of concern. And so here on the project that I'm showing right now, all the facilities are being built. I'll just kind of talk a little bit about what were those plans to mitigate some of those concerns. One was let me talk first about the items that were not of concern or that we were able to identify and rule out as not going to be a problem. One was the native species, because the project was already developed. Flora and fauna was not really an issue of any items that were indigenous to the island, so we weren't going to impact anything there. The other item was, Department of Agriculture came in and said, okay, if you are doing anything, we just want to make sure that, the birds that are flying here are not going to lay eggs in the property. So we took measures to make sure, as the project was being constructed, we took measures to make sure that, we weren't creating any nesting grounds for indigenous birds in the area. Now, one area that we did see that was going to be an area of concern was, that's a 5-acre lot. And so there is a lot of runoff from the property. And so we hired a geotech engineer to give us the physical properties and the requirements of how water percolates on the site. And so with that information, we were actually able to work with our engineers and develop a system to ensure that none of that water spills over into the adjacent properties. And so what we did is, you see here on this property, we developed a retention pond on the north side of the temple and another retention pond on the south side of the temple. And so what happens right now is all the water runoff from that property flows into either one of those retention ponds. And so that's how we were able to mitigate that measure. And having gone through Takamawar a couple years ago and then all the other storms through that, or after that, we believe it's doing its job. So we have no issues there. I think we were able to mitigate that problem. The other item, and actually it's not really a problem, but we wanted to make sure that we're doing our best to sort of like have little impact on the community because we've seen in the past, was the water use of the water. We've seen in the past where other areas where we build multiple facilities and they sort of like affect the pressure of the adjacent properties. So we worked with GWA to make sure that we had, enough water for the property. But what we did for this property is we developed a underground cistern, which is right in this location here. And so what that is it's a reservoir, so that we have only 1 meter serving the site, and that reservoir collects water during the off-peak hours, and then at night when it's used, then it starts to draw water from that reservoir. But at no time at no time does it put additional stress on the main water line feeding that area in Malala Bay. Because as you know, right, this whole area, on the backside, there's residential units, like the Peace Memorial, and then sort to the south, I know there's a housing project development that was slated to go up there, and then up to the north, there's agricultural lots over there as well. So the church was very particular about that, and so let's do our best to mitigate that measure. Additionally to that, what we did is we built a generator facility, which you'll see down here in this corner. And that generator facility actually is backup power for the temple and the meeting house only. And I'll get into what the patron house, probably the patron house in a bit. But, in terms of like hardship after storms, we use that generator facility, so that also kind of eliminates some of the stress on the power agencies. We've all been through that, so we know what that's like. So the other thing I wanted to address was the sewage for the property. There's no septic tanks on the property. We know that we're here next to the aquifer, so we wanted to ensure that there was nothing that was going to seep down into the soil and contaminate our aquifer. So we made sure that all the sewage connections were connected to a public sewer line. So either a sewer line on Marine Corps Drive or Malala Drive. So that's how we resolved that issue. Now, for the patron housing, I'll just talk about the specifics of that. The patron housing is a 2-story facility. As Tony mentioned, it's going to be used for the patrons of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's going to be a housing facility for them, for the members to at least have a place to stay while they're here. It's 14,700 square feet. The first floor is primarily used for administrative functions. And I'll just probably switch back and forth if you don't mind giving me just to show you. So the first floor is used for administrative functions. It has a library room. In addition to that, there's also a dining hall there and a kitchen for the patrons to use while they're here. The second floor is where we have the sleeping quarters. There's 9 sleeping quarters. 6 of them are used more like dormitories type units where 4 people can actually occupy those units. 3 of the units are what we call the presidential apartments, and those are more for the durational staff that's here or the temple president. So altogether, this facility can accommodate 27 beds. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here a bit. Okay, so as part of this, the patron house also includes a grounds maintenance building, because obviously we expanded the number of facilities on the property, so now we need, a place to maintain all of them. So right up there to the north of the patron housing is a grounds maintenance facility. We also incorporated into the project a guard shack. Right now, the guards, the security watch around the facility, don't have a place to really congregate. They're just kind of sitting at one of the buildings, you know, so we needed a place for them to stay. So we incorporated a guard shack into the building as well. And then one thing that I do want to point out is that this project is actually going to be sustainability friendly. We're incorporating solar energy into the project. We're working with GPA on this to make sure that we're meeting all the minimum requirements. And, you know, this is going to be first project on this site here that's going to, I want to say, is going to be sustainability friendly, because we're going to try to mitigate some of the stress again on the GPA's power grid system. So, additionally, you know, I know it's probably a little hard to see all of this, but the church is very good about keeping appearance with the site, and when they approached us for this project, one of the things they also wanted to make sure is that, you know, we were fitting in well to the community. They didn't want a commercial type development on the property. They wanted something that fit well with the residential community in terms of its appearance, in terms of its comfort feeling, in terms of you know, how it looks overall. They wanted something that was going to be more encouraging and enticing to the residents. So what we did was we incorporated a lot of landscape into the property. And so with that being said, with the landscape that we're incorporating into the project, we're also building a plant nursery. So what this does is it allows them to replace vegetation or landscape. You know, if there's a sick plant, there's a place where now we've propagated it, you know, they can easily replace that, you know, without having to wait long. And so the property is well kept at all times. So that was one of the main intents behind that. And I just want to say too that in terms of the landscape, what we're doing is we're trying to utilize as much native plants that we possibly can that are suitable for this tropical environment. So that was one of the things that we incorporated into the project. Okay. So as you can see, this is sort of a blow up of what the patron housing site is going to look like. In addition to that, because we're kind of, when we put the new building up, obviously we're going to offset the flow of water on the site. So what we have to do is actually build another retention pond back in this area here, a smaller one, which really just is there to filter out the water on the backside, and then it basically transfers it down to the main retention pond right up there in front here on the Record Drive. Okay. So, this is another blow up of the property, and really what I wanted to just point out here is that even around the maintenance facilities, there's going to be landscape. So it's all going to look all tidy. It's going to look well kept. You know, the entire site is going to look well kept. In addition to that, what we're hoping to do, and we're still looking at we're studying this and looking at the feasibility of incorporating the project, is provide you know, additional solar power, solar energy for the temple and the meeting house. And so that little box right here was what we planned, and it's supposed to be a self-contained power energy container. So that's something right now that we're looking at and that we're going to be proposing in the future. And again, you know, this is all sort of like our effort to make, you know, to mitigate adverse impact on the community and make it as more community friendly, if you would, as possible. Okay. Now, I showed you the first floor plan. This is the second floor plan. This is the building section through the patron housing. We were very careful. We kind of made every effort to make sure that we're including the zoning law guidelines for building height restrictions on the property. So, you know, this just shows you that, you know, we're not exceeding that 30 feet maximum height that's required for two-story building in this location. Here's an aerial view just to give you an idea of how it looks and how that cross intersection between Malala Drive and Record Drive works. One of the things I I didn't talk about was the traffic flow in and out of the site. So let me just talk a little bit about that because initially when we did the first two buildings, and I don't know if you can see this here, maybe this is a lot clearer, but we had designed the entire site for 150 parking stalls, which is way more than what's required for these two buildings. But we also kept in mind that we wanted to make sure that we had enough parking stalls for the patron house. But with that being said, though, when we build the patron house, what we're going to do is we're going to remove some of those parking stalls and build bus stalls instead. So that when members fly in, buses can take them to the property and drop them off. And as Tony was mentioning yesterday, that, these residents are here only for 3 or 4 days. When they're here, the buses don't stay, they just drop them off. So this is not going to be a continuous, like a tour bus agency that runs around the clock. This is just going to be dropping them up and picking them up when they're ready to be picked up. So in terms of impact to the traffic flow on the site, we studied that. We also looked at the church's hours of operation, and we came up with the conclusion that it's not going to impact the traffic. It will be very minimal impact to the traffic because no one is going to be driving a car there with the exception of those staying in the residential apartments or any of the durational staff. So very minimal impact to new cars that are using the site. Plus, in addition to that, during the weekdays, the church, the facility or the site's really not being used. The meeting house is not being used, and the temple is not being used in most days. It's being used after hours, between the hours of 6 to 9. Correct. So that should.
That's our schedules.
So 6 to 9, and then on the weekends again, primarily on Sundays, in the morning and then right after lunch. So none of these times that the church is, has this high volume of traffic on the site are times that are peak hour times for the rest of the community. So we felt like we were okay with that. So there's an in and out along Marine Corps Drive, and then there's an in and out along Malala Drive. So that's what this area we actually use it to. Okay, and then this is the appearance of the front view of the patron housing. We wanted something that wasn't going to be too intrusive, but it's also going to be modern and contemporary and fits in with the community. It's going to be built out of concrete. That's material that's suitable for this location. Okay. There's a picture of the patron house with the grounds maintenance building. And then here's a back view, back area view showing the plant nursery behind the patron houses. So it's sort of out of sight. It's not going to be a permanent structure. It's just going to be a place really where they can propagate and culture some of the plants that they're using for the site. Okay, here's just another view coming off Marine Corps Drive. And with that being said, that's all I have, unless there's any other questions for anybody in the chat or here. Here.
So again, this public hearing is being live streamed on the Yigo Mayor's Office YouTube channel. However, we don't have any comments or questions on our live stream. So I want to thank Mr. Joe Pangilinan for giving this presentation on this project.
Thank you. Thank you. And Tony, I know you have.
No, thank you. Thanks for anybody that's watching, and thanks for your work, Joe.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating in this again. I can't say enough. Thank you. We enjoy doing this, promoting our project. So thank you.
So at this time, we conclude this public hearing. And again, thank you to those who are watching us live. Thank you.